Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Brent and Katie. Good job. All right, so today with our telethon, I almost feel like we have a fairy godmother granting our wishes. Let's take a look at our thermometer because I think some things have been happening in the last 15 minutes. Let's check it out. Let's see if we've gotten closer to 100 donors. Oh my goodness. Oh, I think it might even need 95 donors. That's 2 more donors than I last looked at it, which was like 30 seconds ago. That's amazing. We are 5 donors away from 100 donors for this PBD Relief Fund. It is like a dream come true for us. I think we feel the love and support coming from all of you that are watching and that are donating and that are sharing your stories and encouraging your friends and family to donate to us. We've always known that the people in our community is what makes us the strongest. You know, the personalities, the passions, the diversity of talents, and everyone willing to give and pull together. It's a wonderful thing. Let's do some prizes. All right. Let's do Adam's private lesson since he's doing an interview next. Oh, I forgot to take all right, Adam's private lesson we're doing Amberlynn Jones. That's probably one of her girls get to do that one. All right. And let's do another t-shirt. Quarantine t-shirt, the Dixon family. All right. Let's do one more. Eve Eugenio. Now I have to tell you, this is my daughter, and she saved up for $20 so she could donate in hopes that she could win a t-shirt. So you got it, sweetheart. Good job. All right, good job. Okay, I'm happy for her. She's such a sweetie. Okay, so and here's a reminder of what they look like. Pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about just a little bit how you donate. You can text PBD Strong to 44321. You can also I'd ask you to take a moment to share this event. Thank you. Here's the steps. You text PBD Strong to 44321. You'll get a link, and then you can submit. So one of the things that you can do right now, since we're so close, is you can text somebody that you know that might be willing to make a donation, or share on Facebook or social media what we're up to. I also want to just put a plug out there. Our last two interviews around 7 o'clock, both of them are going to share some dancing with you. So, and one of our interviewers is going to sing. So we have a little bit of variety coming up. But nobody is probably more interesting as far as PBD goes than our next guest, who we've already heard about from our founder, Sherry Ponder. But I'm going to let Adam Lee introduce you. We have to do a social distancing transition again. We're trying to be good here. But here you go, Adam.
That was 6 feet, I promise. All right. So like she said, I'm super duper duper excited for this interview. And this is for Mathew Longhurst, calling Mathew. There you are. Boy, you look handsome today.
It's great to see you.
You too. So this is the man, the myth, the legend. And in my brain, I mean, forgive me if I say this wrong, but your life has been pretty well defined by Pacific Ballroom dance. Maybe not defined, but the majority
it's been
of
a constant. Yeah, for sure.
You've been involved in one form or another. So we're going to go through as much as we can. This is going to be the life of Mathew Longhurst as seen through PBD eyes. No, just kidding.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to pack all this into just a little bit amount of time. So maybe for those who want to see the extended portion of our interview, you can view the PBD website later on. No, I'm just kidding. That was a total lie. Not funny either. So let's start at the beginning. You were a participant in PBD, although it wasn't really called PBD back then. Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention, we have lots of pictures of you that your loving wife submitted, and there's little captions for each picture so that we don't have to stop and talk about each picture. People can just read them as we're talking. But they're just going to be randomly scrolling through as we go, so enjoy this walk down memory lane.
I'll try not to cringe too hard.
So talk to us about the beginning. How did you get started? What was it like back then? Heard a little bit
Yeah,
about
so I knew Sherry, and Sherry, our founder, she called me up one day out of the blue and said, "Hey, Matt, I'm putting together a team of dancers, and I think you would really like this. And this, of course, means there's going to be girls there." And I was convinced at that point, right? So I showed up, and it was love at first cha-cha, or whatever we did first.
Wow. And it wasn't
Yeah.
called PBD, it was called 48 Feet back
It
then.
it wasn't even called 48 Feet. It was, this photo was from the Federal Way LDS Stake Youth Dance Festival.
Ah,
And so there was no concept of an organization or even a club or anything other than this church event. But
then-
when we got
oh, go
when
ahead.
we got to the end of the event, I made clear that I wasn't done dancing, and she decided to graciously accommodate that by continuing to teach us.
So would you say you were maybe a little bit of the catalyst for what this has become in a way? Like,
I was certainly a full supporter.
that's good. And
Yeah.
Did you have any idea that it would actually grow to an organization, let alone?
Oh, no. No, I mean, no, not at all. At that point, I was hoping that she would keep teaching me long enough for me to graduate from high school and go get more instruction, at
Which you did.
school, which I did. Yeah,
And that happened at Brigham Young University, right?
correct. Yep.
Is that where you met Heather?
That is where I met Heather. So we met in a summer gold Latin class, and I told her she had a nice cha-cha.
What a
And,
pickup line.
I mean, it worked, right?
Did she say you had a nice anything?
She didn't. Well, she was interested enough.
Well, I mean, with the moves of Mathew Longhurst, who wouldn't be interested, right?
Well, I don't know about that. Our first date was we actually went dancing, and we were doing the mambo out on the dance floor, and she totally clocked me in the nose with her elbow,
Ooh.
and it was awesome.
It was awesome. And the story doesn't stop there. You kept dancing at BYU, and then
Yes.
when you graduated, you moved back to the Seattle area. Is that?
Yeah, we graduated in about 2002, and our oldest daughter Cora had just been born, and decided we wanted to head up to Seattle to make our life up here. And we were here for, I don't know, some months, and was aware that Sherry still had the dance team going,
And by
again,
then it had grown into.
it had grown. Yeah, I think she told us that it was 60, 70, maybe 80 kids at that point, and it was just like this. It was I've heard several interviewers refer to the Sacagawea cafeteria
Sacagawea days.
with the gross floor. And
Which is when I joined, by the way.
right. So she called us up and said, "Matt, we got more kids than we can handle, and how about you come teach dance on Thursday?" And we thought, oh, we can help out one time. There's no, it's not too big of a commitment. And here we
Once
are.
a week, or was it just one time, or did they think once a week?
It was, I mean, I think it was open, like she just asked us to come on Thursday.
Smart woman.
There was no talk of like every Thursday or anything like that. But it was obvious
that realized that this was going to be a little bit more than once.
I mean, so we had a blast that first night teaching, and it was obvious that she needed more help. So we were at a point in our lives then when we had some time, and it was all volunteer, but it was fun. And so we said, hey, we'll keep coming back. Let us know what you need, and we're still coming back.
And it was just volunteer time, right?
Yeah, for many years.
Yeah. So you've seen the progression, and you've seen quite a few different milestones of PBD. So talk to me about like some of those milestones. I know you were there the first time we went to nationals. You were there when we got a studio. What are some of those big milestones that stick out to you?
Yeah. So, the first time we went to nationals was a big one. Well, let me go back before that. The first time we did a concert was a big deal. So the first time we did a concert, before we did
Thomas Jefferson High School.
It was not even at TJ. It was at Kylo Middle School.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
So we they weren't in the habit of having concerts. They would go where they were invited to go. Usually it was a stake dance or a school event or something. And so, early on we were like, hey, why don't we do a concert? We have so many numbers. And so a bunch of parents, and of course Sherry and Paul, were supportive, and so we did that in the Kylo time was junior high school gymnasium. The next year was our first year at the Auburn Performing Arts Center, and it's been there ever since, obviously. So that was back in like 2004 maybe. And then in 2005, late 2005, we kind of got the bug that, hey, we could take these kids on the road and take them down to nationals. And we think they'd do okay. So we made a big
really
push.
Think that?
Yeah, of course we did.
Good.
Of course we did. So we made this big, so we decided in November, it's like Thanksgiving, to go down in March. So it was like this late, let's do this now. And so we made this big push, and it was all hands on deck with Sherry coaching with Rick at that first year, Brent and Katie and Heather and I helping out in different ways. I think my main job was to handle all the logistics, the flights and the planning and the arrangements.
They did the Diamonds medley, yeah.
The Diamonds medley, yes, that very first one. So that was in 2006. By 2008, we still didn't have a home. So we were still scrounging for space every single time we had to practice. We had a few set places that we could usually count on. The community center in Pacific was our kind of our long-standing home.
You're preaching to the choir, because I remember I was on the team at this point, and we had a phone tree that every night Brent and Katie would call 2 people, and they would call 2 more people as to where we're practicing that night. And it could be anywhere from Tacoma to Seattle. Like any school that would take us, that's where we were.
Yeah, and even with that, like the mantra was check the website before you leave the house, because it could change. So we were quickly losing our minds, and it became apparent that, like, unless we found a permanent solution, this just wasn't going to be sustainable. So we made a big push. Now, this was probably one of the bigger things that we undertook in the first decade of our involvement, was to get a studio, because Brent, Katie, Matt, Heather, Lori, Hudson, who was our executive director at the time, the 4 of us that were teaching, we were all a bunch of 20-somethings, which I look at that now and I'm like, holy crud, you guys were a bunch of kids, right?
Seemed old to us.
Yeah, right. And, and all these parents were sending us their kids to teach them, and we had to convince the board of trustees at the time that this was a viable thing. And it was far more expensive, far more of a long-term commitment than anything that the organization had been asked to undertake before. It was going to mean a significant bump to tuition, which had been more or less nominal before that point. But we had enough parents that believed in us and that were willing to support us, and we found the right space where we still are today. And we got our studio in like August or September of 2008. So that was a huge milestone. And like the first month we had like this particle board floor. We didn't even have a dance
I remember that. Yeah.
With tape.
It was duct taped together. Yeah.
No mirrors, no anything. It was just like naked space. No.
But we had a space, and we didn't have to question where we were going to be.
No one could kick us out.
That's true.
It was great.
True. That's great. And then you kept coaching, kept teaching.
Kept coaching. Yeah. So 2009 or 10 was the first time that our junior team went down to nationals, and Heather and I were coaching that team at that time. So that was the first time we had our own team to take down to nationals, and we choreographed our own 2 medleys. We decided to jump right in both a Latin and Alice, which is one of my favorite things that I ever created. So that was in like 2010. Also in 2010, we brought dancing classrooms online. Heather had seen an article in one of the publications, like the USA Dance magazine or whatever. They did a little profile on dancing classrooms and said, hey, we could adopt that here probably. And I called up the guy that was running it, and he confirmed that they were looking to grow. And so we licensed
Pierre
it.
Delane, or?
No, it wasn't Pierre. It was so they had brought on an executive director named John Ross at the time, who became a a good mentor and a good friend while our times overlapped. And so he worked with us to get the site started here, and we launched that in the fall of 2010.
And did that just take off immediately, or was it really hard to get that?
No, that was hard. So that was pounding. So it's still so hard to get into schools.
Well, yeah.
You've got to
Yeah.
fight through a lot of restrictions on that teachers have on their time and what they're able to do with their, their instruction time that they're required to get in. So convincing a school to support it financially is a big deal, and then it's getting the instruction time carved out. And since nobody in the area was doing it, like we couldn't point to local success stories and say, hey, the Way School District or the Auburn School District. So yeah, that was a struggle, and it took several years before we had kind of a sustainable level of participation in the program.
And that was your main focus, like you specifically, you were in charge of that dancing classrooms kind of sector. And I know you traveled and you trained at other sites across the world, right?
Yeah, well, so that caused my professional career to take an unexpected detour, right? So throughout all of this that we've been describing, I went to law school. I became a CPA after practicing law for a couple of years, and was deep into my professional progress there. And in 2013, I had been heading up dancing classrooms here since that time, and somewhat involved in the national movement, national organization. But a position became available with Dancing Classrooms, the organization for a director of their national network. And I thought to myself, hey, I could actually turn this passion of mine into like my real full-time job, so that it's not my night weekend gig. And I applied for and got the position. So for about 3 years, from 2013 to 2016, I was employed by Dancing Classrooms, and was doing what John Roth, the man I referred to earlier, was doing before, starting up new sites across the country and supporting existing sites. That was fun.
Wow. And then we're really short on time, unfortunately, but let's kind of fast forward through that career to where you are now. Obviously, your wife has been the executive director for many years. You have all three of your daughters in the program right now, but you're not currently an employee, or you yourself working you're still a supporter of PBD. You're still a big part of it. Your family is. Has it been weird or different for you in that sense?
It's been so great.
That's true. That's honest. Yeah. So what has been the biggest difference, or do you?
Oh, the biggest difference. PBD is an intense ride, and it
not
is
all gumdrops and rainbows.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of gumdrops and rainbows, but it's pretty all-consuming. And it's really hard to only be in it a little bit, right? And I'm not talking about as a parent, but as like a staff member, right? So it became pretty obvious to me, several years ago, while I was at Dancing Classrooms, really, that I needed to pull back and focus more on my career and things outside the studio. And it's been a wonderful, restful period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the story of my involvement up before that time was, like I said, it was a night and a weekend thing. So for me, it was staying up very late into the night, often choreographing or handling whatever needed to be done. And now I can just be a dad, support my girls, and support them not only as any other parent does, but also with the perspective of one who sort of created the program in a lot of ways,
and now
to navigate it. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, we're actually out of time, but do you have any last words? Why should people be donating to PBD at this time?
Oh, it must survive and it must thrive. I've spent the last 5.5 hours now watching interviewee after interviewee tell this story. I hardly need to add to it. It's made an impact on countless lives, and it will continue to do so if it's able to survive, which I think it's in a great position to be able to do. It's being led really well. I'd say that not just because Heather's the executive director, but because she has surrounded herself with amazingly capable staff and a board of trustees that's really supportive. So think we're
Well,
in good
I
shape.
would be amiss not to thank you for your dedication to it as well. Thank you for helping make this possible and for sharing that story with us that I'm sure a lot of people didn't know.
You bet.
All right. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Anne and say goodbye to you, Mathew. Thank you
Thanks,
very much,
Anna.
good sir.
Thanks, everyone.
Anne, come on over.